I will start it off with the Minister of Health, Dr. Daniel Ngamije. Thank you so much, first of all, for joining us. And please give us the latest on the 41 confirmed cases of coronavirus in Rwanda. How are they doing?
They are doing well so far. We expect that early next week we might discharge some of them. Clinically, they are doing well. Most of symptoms at the time of admission are out. Some of them are still having a little bit fever, like 1 time per day. At the time of the entrance, they had 3 times of fever per day. So for us, it's good. We are happy with how they are doing.
We saw, China reaching a peak in about a month before they started seeing a decline in the number of new cases. How far are we close to our peak, or even seeing the decline in
I can't predict the day we reach our peak. It's very difficult to anticipate all of them, the peak, even if we are trying to do some modeling in terms of the trend of the outbreak for the coming weeks. But given all measures that we are implementing to contain the outbreak, let's see what will happen in 2 weeks. And then it will help us to size when probably we'll be starting the decline.
Yeah, sure.
Or if we're still probably having some new cases. So I think in 2 weeks, we'll know what will be the future of this outbreak.
2 weeks, it is. 2 weeks, it is. Now, we're seeing many cases, new cases coming from Dubai. We expected that the closure of the airport would see a decline in new cases coming from outside, but most of the cases that we're seeing are coming from outside, specifically Dubai. What is being done, and why is it so?
So first, majority of cases for the last 2 days coming from Dubai, these are cases that were in quarantine since their arrival.
Okay.
So we tested them, and we noted that the majority of cases are coming from Dubai, probably for the reason that Dubai is an international city, international trade city, where you have people coming from all over the world. So there is a high risk to be in contact with people infected, especially these Rwandese coming from Dubai. They are in business. So to be exposed to someone who is infected, it's an easy, the probability is high for being in contact with someone who is infected, given the nature of the city, the business they are doing, the characteristic of the city. Probably that's the reason. So we have them, we tested them, and then we start to trace their contacts. And among contacts, we have different members of families, etc. But also we started to trace even those who came before the date of stopping the international air traffic in Rwanda. And that's why we are now getting, again, some numbers increasing, just because we expand the size of people we are tracing, especially those coming from Dubai these times.
All right, so there is some reported cases across the world of people, suspected cases, of people fleeing quarantine. When you're suspected, when you're traveling from Dubai, you've arrived in the country, you don't want to be associated with coronavirus, and you flee somehow. How are these people in Rwanda, the contacts that you mentioned, cooperating with the Ministry of Health to make sure that we have them checked, but also in touch with the authorities?
Okay, at the beginning, some of them were reluctant to come, because we are tracing them from different sources of information we have. And we invite them to come for being tested and then being in quarantine. So some of them were reluctant, but with a lot of communication, informing them that it is in their interest to be tested, so that whoever is sick is treated for 14 days and then be released after. So, and conditions where we are having them, these are really good conditions. They have meals 3 times per day. They have nice rooms, self-contained. They have access to telephones. So it's not a prison as such. It's just a good place where people can be.
Who foots the bills, by the way?
The government. The government of Rwanda is paying. Everything is covered. So
fantastic. So lastly, of course, I would But before I ask you this last question, let me first engage Minister of Trade and Industry, Madam Soraya Hakuziyaremye. How has our economy hit by coronavirus, and what is being done to make sure that we don't go from probably the worst to the worst?
I believe, and thank you for having me. I believe the main concern was, one, how do we protect the population, being in the trade industry as well, or also in the industry. Second, it's making sure that the basic items, be it food items, sanitation, are also available on the market, and that we don't run into shortage. And the second or third was making sure that we prevent speculation. That goes around the world, speculation on prices, especially on those essential items. So there are a number of actions that have been taken by the government, first and foremost, making sure that we can avoid price hikes that have been reported all over the country, setting prices for the basic food items, which later on we added on also basic sanitation products, especially the preventive products being masks or sanitizers, because on those ones we had also cases of price hikes. Second is to make sure that the transport of goods, being on imports and exports, can continue. And this is one of the also the resolutions by the Sectoral Council of EAC Ministers of Health yesterday, which also provided for a framework on how the transport of goods and also, services, how are they going to continue so that we don't restrict movement of goods within our region.
There was a reported decline of food flowing from, provinces coming to Kigali, and, traders were blaming this on the hiking prices. How are you in touch with the traders? Did you even get to know about this case that we had?
Yes, absolutely, and especially after the announcement on the enhanced measures that the government took on Saturday. So the first 2 days we had a lot of, I would say, chaos where some of the traders thought they were not allowed to go out of their homes and open shops. Some transporters also were reluctant to come from districts to Kigali or vice versa. But we've, engaged PSF, which we've been in close collaboration with, to make sure that, the guidelines and what is allowed and not allowed is explained to the traders, but also working with the local government so that be it traders of basic items are facilitated into opening, into receiving their goods as they used to. And second, also on the transport side, people coming from the district coming to Kigali are also facilitated. So I think by now things are moving in the right direction. We still have some challenges, especially in secondary cities, where people who have shops that sell both food items and other items were either reluctant to open, or also sometimes authorities, telling them that they shouldn't open because they don't have only food. But that has been clarified, so they're allowed to work and open as they used to. And the last thing was also on the markets. Markets are open, and the supply chain continues as due.
Okay. Before we come on the set, the G20 just announced 5 trillion to support global economic recovery. What does that mean to Rwanda's economy?
I think for Rwanda's economy and economies of developing countries, this is a much-needed boost. Now it's understanding the modalities of how we can tap into that financing. And as an area of discussion was also to look at how governments of developing countries can also be facilitating in reimbursement of their bilateral loans from G20 countries, which would then provide room for their much-needed budget on especially fighting the spread of coronavirus, but also reviving our economies as we go.
In terms of keeping a constant flow of supply chain. What is the government doing to make sure that the imports, especially for the basic commodities, keeps flowing in, coming in as we expect, so that it doesn't affect the prices on the markets?
I think the fact that even countries that have put restrictions on travels, so same as Rwanda has done now for close to a week, the movement of goods continues. Second was also to already approach private sector federation from the month of January to make sure that the markets where they're importing, as soon as they're impacted, we can have alternative markets. As you know, China had been closed for close to 2 months. So we had also tried to mitigate the risk of shortage. Fortunately, most of our imports from China were mainly intermediary goods or equipments, which are important for our industry, but not food items, for instance. And the second thing was also already working with the Rwanda Revenue Authority. Yesterday, they announced some measures to support our private sector in extending the deadline by which they should pay their taxes. So it's 15 days more for large companies and up to 30 days for small companies. And it's a much appreciated relief. And second, the central bank has also approached banks to make sure that they can also restructure loans and facilitate people who have been impacted by the COVID, so that, you know, in terms of reimbursement, they're not penalized by this crisis.
Before I get to your last remarks, Honorable Minister, tell us, when should we expect, probably, if all goes well, recoveries? The first case of a recovery, someone was recovered from coronavirus and been discharged.
I think the first patient will be discharged next week, in the middle of the week.
Fantastic.
In the middle of
That's
next
good
week.
news.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Good news.
So what is the message in your respective sectors? What message should Rwandans know going forward?
I think the message is that we need to comply with the Ministry of Health instructions in terms of prevention of this disease. People should really comply with hygiene. Avoid being in crowd. Gathering, especially where you have so many close to each other. So social distancing is the key. This is the only way to stop this disease. Again, if you know that you have been in contact with a confirmed case, better you came for being tested, and then the rest we treat if you're confirmed, and if you're not confirmed, we just keep you for 14 days, and then we release you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Honourable Minister.
I believe, you know, we are still a pro-business government, but health comes first. So all the measures we've taken, even during this lockdown, is still meant to make sure that we can prevent the spread of coronavirus, but also helping all the sectors that are in difficulties and engage them to see what the impact has been. And we want healthy and sustainable businesses, which is why we've been very tough, so that people can understand the severity of the situation we're in, for people who go against the guidelines in terms of price hikes, but also the quantities that we've set, the maximum quantities, to avoid the panic shopping we've seen, especially that we're making everything possible to make sure that there's no shortage. People have enough stock, and we're really working closely with the private sector to mitigate all the risks to our economies.
Honourable Minister Soreya Okuziyaramye, Honourable Minister Daniel Ngamije, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.